On the remote, ice-locked world of Varithis, winter never ended. Snow fell in thick, silent veils year-round, burying jagged peaks and ancient ice caves beneath blankets so deep they muffled the howl of the wind itself. It was a place forgotten by the galaxy, a pale blue pinprick on star charts no trader bothered to visit. But for Darien Voss it was home, not by choice but by fate. Once a medic in the Outer Rim Defense Corps, he'd been discharged after a plasma grenade left his left arm permanently numb and his nerves frayed. With nowhere else to go, he'd bought a decommissioned habitat pod from a junk trader and set it down near the base of the glacial spine, where the auroras danced in violet ribbons across the night sky. Darien lived simply. He hunted snow hares with a laser-assisted bow, melted ice for water, and grew bitter-tasting greens in hydroponic trays under heat lamps. He spoke to no one but the wind, until the day the sky cracked open. It began as a distant rumble, felt more than heard, vibrating through the permafrost beneath his boots. Then came the fire, a streak of silver and crimson arcing across the heavens, trailing smoke like a dying comet. Darien watched from his porch as the object slammed into the ice field half a kilometer west. He hesitated. Space debris was common enough here, old satellites, failed probes, but something in his gut twisted. The angle was too controlled, the descent too deliberate. Someone had steered that crash. He suited up, checked his pulse rifle, more for show than use, and trudged through the storm toward the impact site. What he found wasn't wreckage. It was a life pod, sleek and obsidian black, humming faintly despite the frost encasing its hull. The hatch lay open, steam hissing into the cold. And inside, curled together like nesting birds, were 3 children. They weren't human. Their skin shimmered with the deep, iridescent purple of twilight on amethyst. White hair, fine as spun glass, clung to their small faces, matted with frost. Their eyes, large, almond-shaped, glowing faintly amber, blinked up at him with a mixture of terror and defiance. The oldest couldn't have been more than 10 Earth years, the youngest still clutching a stuffed creature made of metallic thread. They shivered violently, their breath fogging in the air. Darien didn't think. He unzipped his thermal coat and wrapped it around them, scooping the smallest into his arms. "Come on," he said, voice rough from disuse, "before you freeze solid." Back at the pod, he thawed them slowly, hot broth, heated blankets, and the gentle hum of the habitat's climate system. They flinched at every sound, every movement. But hunger, it seemed, was a universal tongue. When he placed bowls of stewed hare and steamed root veg before them, their eyes widened. The oldest, a girl with sharp cheekbones and a scar running from her temple to her jaw, sniffed the air like a wary fox. Then, with a quick nod to the others, she ate. Greedily, but with surprising grace. Over the next few days, words trickled out, halting, accented but clear. They were from the Celestial Dominion, a vast interstellar empire ruled by the Empress Lyra Solvon. Their ship, a royal courier vessel, had been ambushed by dissident rebels near the Kavari Belt. Their parents, high-ranking dignitaries, had sealed them into the escape pod just before the main hull detonated. They'd been drifting for weeks, life support failing, until Varithis's magnetic field snagged them. Their names were Zanara, Kirill, and little Mavrin. Zanara, the eldest, spoke with the clipped authority of someone used to command. Kirill, the middle child, was quiet but observant, always watching Darien's hands as he repaired things or cooked. Mavrin, barely 5, clung to Darien's leg like a second shadow, chattering in broken Galactic standard and giggling whenever Darien made funny faces. Darien, who hadn't smiled in years, found himself doing it often. He taught them how to trap snow hares without breaking their legs. They taught him the songs of their homeworld, melodies that shimmered like ice crystals in sunlight. He mended their pod's comms array with scavenged parts, only to learn it was irreparably damaged. They were stranded, and so, quietly, without ceremony, they became a family. Months passed. The auroras danced. Snow piled high against the pod's reinforced windows. Darien built a lean-to for extra storage. Zanara helped design it using geometric principles he'd never seen before. Kirill discovered a way to cultivate edible lichen from the cave walls using bioluminescent fungi. Mavrin named every snow hare they caught Fluff, Prickle, and Sir Squeaks-a-Lot, and insisted they be released after inspection. Darien's numb arm still ached in the cold, but his heart no longer felt frozen. He didn't know that across the galaxy, the Empress Lyra Solvon had declared a system-wide mourning period for her lost grandchildren. The Dominion's intelligence network had traced the pod's last signal to the Varithis system, But by the time scouts arrived, they found only empty ice and a dead beacon. The children were presumed dead. Lyra, grief-stricken and furious, executed 3 admirals for the security failure and doubled the bounty on the rebel leaders. Then came the grainy transmission. A Dominion merchant vessel, mapping asteroid belts for rare minerals, picked up a faint energy signature from Varithis, oddly rhythmic, unlike natural phenomena. Curious, they sent a drone. It returned with images. A human male, rugged and bearded, laughing as he lifted Mavrin onto his shoulders. Zanara practicing knife-throwing at a target carved into ice. Kirill sketching star maps in the frost on a windowpane. The drone also caught something else. The children wearing hand-knitted scarves, eating stew from mismatched bowls, sleeping under the same thermal blanket. They looked happy. The footage was flagged, encrypted, and delivered directly to the obsidian throne. Empress Lyra watched it 3 times. The first, she wept. The second, she raged. The third, she smiled. A slow, terrifying thing that made her advisors step back. The man who had fed her grandchildren, sheltered them, treated them as his own. There was only one proper reward for such loyalty in the old ways of the Dominion. Marriage. Not just any marriage, but a royal bonding, sealed by the Empress's own decree. According to ancient edicts, any outsider who protected royal blood without seeking reward earned the right to join the dynasty. It was a relic from an age of honor duels and blood oaths, rarely invoked, never ignored. Within hours, a warrant was issued, not for arrest but for betrothal. Darien Voss, human of Earth origin, was hereby summoned to the Celestial Court to stand before the Empress and formalize his union with the royal line. The courier ship arrived without warning. One morning, as Darien was patching a leak in the water recycler, the sky darkened, not with storm clouds, but with the underbelly of a Dominion cruiser, sleek and opalescent, hovering silently above his pod like a god descending. Crimson banners unfurled from its hull. Trumpets, actual brass-like instruments, sounded through the thin mountain air. Zanara was the first to see it. She dropped the ice spear she'd been carving and ran outside, barefoot in the snow. "They found us," she whispered. Awe and dread tangled in her voice. Kirill stood beside her, jaw tight. "Will he be punished?" Mavrin, clutching Sir Squeaks-a-Lot, burst into tears. "No, Darien is good. He saved us." Darien stepped out slowly, his rifle slung over his shoulder. Not as a threat, but as habit. The cruiser lowered a ramp of shimmering light, and down it marched a procession of royal guards, tall, armored in silver, faces obscured by mirrored helms. At their center walked a figure both regal and fearsome. Empress Lyra Solvan was taller than her grandchildren, her purple skin etched with glowing silver tattoos that pulsed with her heartbeat. Her white hair flowed like a living river down her back, interwoven with strands of star metal. Her eyes, amber, like Zanara's, locked onto Darien with unnerving intensity. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, the Empress spoke, her voice echoing as if channeled through ancient stone. "You fed my blood when the stars turned cold. You gave them warmth when the void offered none. For this, there is only one debt the Dominion may pay." She stepped forward, her boots crunching the snow. "You are to be my son-in-law, my heir consort. By dawn tomorrow, you will stand before the court of Celestia and swear the bond oath." Darien stared. "I what?" Zanara elbowed him. "Say yes, you fool, or she'll turn you into a garden statue." "This isn't a request," Lyra continued, her tone softening just slightly. "It is a recognition. You have already acted as kin. Now you shall be named as such." Darien looked at the children, his children in every way that mattered. Zanara gave him a tiny nod. Kirill managed a small, encouraging smile. Mavrin held out his arms. "But I'm just a medic," Darien said, voice hoarse. "I fix broken bones, not empires." "You fixed their hearts," Lyra said simply. "That is harder." And so, against all logic, against the odds of 1,000 galaxies, Darien Voss agreed. The journey to the Celestial Court was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The cruiser, named the Dawn's Mercy, folded space like origami, leaping from star to star in heartbeats. Inside, Darien was given silken robes, a translator implant behind his ear, and a crash course in Dominion etiquette. Rule number 1. Never refuse a cup of moon tea, even if it glows. The children were radiant with excitement. Zanara walked with her head high, reclaiming her birthright. Kirill devoured datapads on Dominion history. Mavrin made friends with a robotic steward and taught it how to play hide-and-seek. Darien, meanwhile, tried not to panic. The celestial court orbited a dying star, its palace built inside a hollowed-out asteroid veined with crystalline circuits. Towers of light spiraled into the void. Gardens floated in zero-gravity domes, blooming with flowers that sang in harmonic frequencies. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet, like crushed petals and lightning. He was ushered into the grand hall, a cavernous space where the floor was a live map of the Dominion, shifting with the movements of fleets and trade routes. Thousands of dignitaries watched as he approached the obsidian throne, their eyes unreadable behind ceremonial masks. Empress Lyra sat upon her throne, resplendent in robes that shimmered with the colors of nebulae. At her side stood a woman Darien hadn't expected. She was older than the children but younger than Lyra, perhaps in her early 30s by human reckoning. Her purple skin bore the same luminous quality, her white hair braided with threads of gold. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied him with open curiosity. "This is my daughter," Lyra announced. "Princess Vale Solvon, your bride." Darien's stomach dropped. He hadn't been told he was marrying the Empress's daughter. He'd assumed it was some ceremonial title, not an actual union. And now, standing before her, he realized she was striking. Regal, yes, but also weary, as if carrying the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. The bond oath began. Priests chanted in a language that vibrated in Darien's bones. Rings of living metal were brought forth, pulsing with inner light. All he had to do was say, "I bind," and the ceremony would be complete. But then chaos. Alarms blared. The star map floor exploded in crimson warnings. Shouts erupted from the galleries. On the viewing spheres above, rebel ships, dozens of them, emerged from stealth near the palace's outer defenses. The same faction that had attacked the children's vessel. "They've found us," Vale whispered, her composure cracking for the first time. Lyra rose, fury radiating from her like heat. "They dare assault the court on this day?" Darien's medic instincts kicked in. "Get the children to safety," he told Vale, already moving toward the armory alcove he'd spotted earlier. "No," Zanara said, stepping forward. "We fight." "Your children," Darien snapped. "We are Solvon," Kirill said quietly. "And this is our home." Mavrin, surprisingly, nodded. "Sir Squeaks-a-Lot says we win." What followed was a blur of strategy and steel. The palace defenses held, but barely. Rebel commandos breached the lower levels, their armor black as void, weapons humming with stolen Dominion tech. Darien, armed with a pulse blade and a shield generator the size of his palm, fought alongside royal guards, using tricks from old battlefield days. Feints, distractions, using the environment. Vale, it turned out, was a skilled tactician. She coordinated the defense from the throne room, her voice calm even as explosions rocked the halls. Zanara led a team of junior cadets through ventilation shafts to sabotage the rebels' jamming device. Kirill hacked into the palace's AI to reroute security drones. Mavrin, hidden in a storage closet with palace pets, sent coded messages using the squeaks of his stuffed toy, signals only the palace's animal-linked comms could interpret. Darien took a plasma bolt to the shoulder, his good one, and kept moving. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but some things never left you. In the final confrontation, deep in the crystal core, the palace's energy heart, he faced the rebel leader, a scarred warlord named Jorik, who sneered at the sight of a human. "You think betting their princess makes you one of them?" Jorik spat, lunging with a vibroaxe. Darien dodged, rolled, and jammed his pulse blade into a coolant pipe. Superheated steam erupted, blinding Jorik long enough for Vale to drop from a ceiling conduit and slam an energy gauntlet into his spine. The rebellion crumbled within the hour. Afterward, in the quiet that followed, Darien sat on a balcony overlooking the nebula-draped void, his shoulder bandaged, exhaustion weighing on him like gravity. Vale joined him, holding 2 cups of moon tea. She handed him one. "You fought like a Solvon," she said. "I fought like a medic trying not to lose his family," he replied. She smiled, real, not ceremonial. "Maybe that's the same thing." Inside the palace, the bond oath ceremony resumed. But this time it felt different. Not an obligation, but a choice. Darien looked at Vale, her tired eyes, her quiet strength, and saw not just a princess, but a partner. He looked at Zanara, Kirill, and Mavrin, his wild, brilliant, impossible children, and knew he couldn't leave them now, not when they just found their way back to each other. "I bind," he said, As the rings fused to their fingers, glowing with shared light, the Empress wept. But the story didn't end there, because in the shadows of the galaxy Jorik's second-in-command had escaped. And deep in the Kavari belt, a hidden fleet began to stir, older, darker, forged in the ashes of a forgotten war. They had seen the footage from Varithis too. They knew the children lived. And they knew something else. That the bloodline of Solvan was vulnerable not in its power, but in its heart. Darien, now heir consort of the Celestial Dominion, stood on the balcony with Vale at his side, children behind him, and gazed into the stars. The snows of Varithis felt like another lifetime. Yet, in his pocket, he still carried a small, carved ice spear, Zanara's first, wrapped in a scrap of thermal cloth. He was no longer just a man in the snow. He was a father, a husband, a protector of thrones. And somewhere, in the endless dark, the next storm was gathering. Weeks passed in the gilded halls of the Celestial Court, but peace was a fragile thing. Polished on the surface, cracked beneath. Darien adapted as best he could. He wore the heir consort's robes with awkward grace, attended strategy councils where star systems were moved like pieces on a board, and endured endless lessons in Dominion lore. Yet his true solace remained the children. Every evening, without fail, he met them in the Whispering Garden, a floating grove where bioluminescent vines hummed lullabies, and they'd share stories of Varithis. The time Mavrin tried to ride a snow hare, how Kirill once melted an entire ice wall just to prove a thermal theory, or Zanara's failed attempt to brew warrior tea that nearly knocked Darien unconscious for a day. Vale watched these moments from the gallery above, unseen. She'd been raised in ceremony, not closeness. Her childhood had been tutors, protocol, and the cold weight of expectation. Watching Darien laugh, really laugh, with her siblings stirred something unfamiliar in her. Longing. But duty always pulled her away. Whispers in the court grew louder. Some nobles openly questioned the wisdom of binding the royal bloodline to a human, a species known for its volatility, short lifespan, and messy emotions. Others muttered that the Empress had grown sentimental in her grief. Only Lyra's iron will kept dissent in check. Then came the first twist. During a routine scan of the Kavari belt, Dominion deep-range sensors detected a derelict vessel. Its hull marked with the sigil of the Obsidian Concord, a splinter faction thought extinct for 3 centuries. The Concord had once sought to purge the Dominion of impure bloodlines, advocating for genetic purity through brutal eugenics. Their symbol, a broken helix wrapped in thorns. The vessel contained no crew, only data cores, and within them, a chilling revelation. The attack on the children's courier ship hadn't been carried out by common rebels. It had been orchestrated by a revived Concord cell, funded and armed by none other than High Chancellor Valrus, a trusted advisor who had stood at Lyra's right hand for 20 cycles. Valrus, it turned out, had a secret. His bloodline carried recessive Concord genes, erased from official records. He'd spent decades waiting, plotting, biding his time until the royal heirs were vulnerable. The children's survival had thrown his plans into chaos, but not ruin. Now he saw opportunity. Before Lyra could order his arrest, Valrus vanished. His private dreadnought, the Veil of Ash, slipped through a quantum fold near the rimward shroud. But not before transmitting a final message, a broadcast sent across every unsecured channel in the Dominion. Blood diluted cannot rule. His voice hissed over static. The Solvan line is tainted by human weakness, but the Concord will cleanse it. And we already know where your heart lies, Darien Voss. The implication was clear. They would strike at what he loved most. Darien's blood ran cold. Not for himself, but for Varithis. He stormed into the Empress's war chamber that night, ignoring protocol. They'll go back to the ice world, he said, voice low and urgent. It's where they think I'm weakest, where I have no army. Lyra studied him, her amber eyes unreadable. And if they do, then I go back with a fleet. You are not a warlord, Vale said from the shadows, stepping forward. She wore battle armor now, sleek and silver, her white hair braided tightly. But I am. No, Darien said. You stay here, protect the court. I'll draw them out. You'll die, Zanara snapped, appearing in the doorway with Kirill and Mavrin behind her. The Concord doesn't take prisoners. They dissect. I'm not going alone, Darien said. He had a plan, one born of desperation and Medic's cunning. He wouldn't face them with guns or grand ships. He'd lure them into the one place in the galaxy where technology faltered, the glacial spine's magnetic storms. The same anomaly that had masked the children's pod could mask a trap. With Lyra's reluctant blessing, Darien departed within the hour aboard a stealth corvette, the Frost Warden, retrofitted with Dominion shielding and a single passenger. Kirill. I can recalibrate the planet's geothermal vents, the boy explained as they folded space toward Varithis. If we overload the core resonance, we can trigger a localized EMP storm, strong enough to fry unshielded systems for kilometers. Just like the time you melted the ice wall? Darien asked, managing a tired smile. Exactly, Kirill said. But bigger. They arrived under cover of a solar flare. The Frost Warden landed in the same crater where Darien had found the life pod. Everything was as they'd left it. Snowdrifts piled against the habitat pod. The lean-to half collapsed, Maverin's hair traps still strung between frost-laden rocks. For 3 days they worked in silence. Kirill planted resonance emitters in the ice caves while Darien rigged the old pod's power core to act as a detonator. They left false trails, heat signatures, comms chatter, even a decoy Darien made of thermal blankets and spare parts. On the 4th night, the sky darkened. Not with clouds, but with the veil of ash, descending like a predator. Smaller raiders fanned out, scanning the surface. Concord troopers, clad in matte black armor with glowing red ocular slits, repelled from dropships, their weapons humming with anti-biological pulses designed to liquefy organic tissue. Darien watched from a cave mouth, pulse rifle steady. Now, he whispered. Kirill activated the emitters. The ground trembled. A low, resonant tone built in the air, rising to a shriek. Then silence. Every Concord device went dark. Lights flickered out. Dropships sputtered and crashed into the snow. The troopers stumbled, blinded, their suits now little more than heavy shells. Darien moved. He didn't kill. He disabled targeting joints, power couplings, neural relays. He'd been a medic. He knew where not to shoot. But the Concord didn't share his restraint. One trooper, cornered, activated a bioplasma charge in his chest. Kirill shoved Darien aside just in time. The blast threw them both into a crevasse, ice shards raining down like daggers. When Darien came to, the storm had passed. The Concord forces were neutralized, captured or dead. But Kirill lay still, his left leg twisted unnaturally, purple skin pale with shock. Stay with me, Darien pleaded, applying pressure to a wound on the boy's side. You're not leaving me again. Kirill smiled weakly. Didn't plan to. Rescue came swiftly. Vale had followed in a hidden frigate, defying orders. She landed moments later, medical drones swarming around Kirill before Darien could even protest. Back aboard her ship, as Kirill slept under regenerative stasis, Vale turned to Darien. You risked everything. He's my son, Darien said simply. Vale's breath caught. She hadn't heard him say that before. Not aloud. But the victory was short-lived. Interrogations of the captured Concord operatives revealed a horrifying truth. Valrus never intended to win on Varithis. The attack was a diversion. While the Dominion's eyes were on the ice world, he had struck the capital. Using a hidden backdoor in the palace AI, installed decades ago during his rise to power, Valrus had unleashed a neural plague. Not a virus, but a consciousness-affecting wave that targeted Solvon bloodlines specifically. It didn't kill. It rewrote. It erased loyalty, empathy, memory, replacing them with blind obedience to the Concord ideal. Empress Lyra was infected. She now sat upon the obsidian throne, eyes vacant, voice hollow, declaring the Concord the true saviors of the Dominion. Royal guards turned on each other. Noble houses fractured. The court of Celestia was falling from within. Worse, the plague required a psychic anchor. And the strongest anchor was proximity to royal blood. Which meant, the children, Darien whispered, dread coiling in his gut. Zanara and Maverin were still on the palace asteroid. Vale's face went ashen. If they're exposed. She didn't need to finish. The Frost Warden and Vale's frigate raced back through folded space, pushing engines beyond safe limits. They arrived to chaos. The palace spun slowly, half its towers dark. Fighters clashed in the void. Distress calls flooded every channel. They docked in a service bay, weapons ready. Inside, the corridors were eerily quiet. Then, a flicker of movement. Zanara appeared at the end of the hall, dragging Maverin behind her. Both wore emergency breather masks. Zanara's eyes were wide with terror, but her grip on her plasma dagger was firm. They tried to take us to the throne room, she panted when they met. Said the Empress wanted to purify us. But I knew. I saw her eyes empty. Mavrin clung to Darien, sobbing. Grandmother scary now. Before they could retreat, a figure stepped from the shadows. Empress Lyra. Her tattoos no longer glowed. Her white hair hung limp. Her amber eyes stared through them, unseeing. Return the blood to purity, she intoned, voice stripped of warmth. Surrender the human. Surrender the weak. Vale stepped forward. Mother, fight it. Lyra raised a hand. Energy crackled around her fingers. The Empress's innate bioarcane power, now weaponized. Darien didn't hesitate. He fired a neural-dampening round, not to harm, but to disrupt the plague's hold. The shot struck her shoulder. She staggered, blinked, and for a fleeting second, her eyes softened. Vale, she whispered. Then the emptiness returned. With a roar, she unleashed a wave of force that sent them all crashing into the walls. In that moment, Kirill, still limping but determined, activated a device he'd built during the flight back. A harmonic resonator tuned to Solvon brainwave patterns. It wasn't meant to destroy. It was meant to remember. He'd used memories from the children, laughter on Varithis, shared meals, Darien's off-key singing, as data. The device pulsed, emitting a frequency that mimicked the emotional signature of familial love. Lyra froze. Tears welled in her eyes. Zanara, you were so small when you first held a blade. The plague cracked, but Valrus wasn't done. From the observation spire, he triggered the final phase. The palace's core would detonate in 10 minutes, taking the royal family and the truth with it. He'd rather see the Dominion burn than let it be tainted. Get to the escape docks, Darien yelled, but Vale shook her head. There's another way. The core control nexus, it can reroute the overload into the quantum drive. But someone has to stay behind to manually override. I'll do it, Zanara said. No, Darien said firmly. I'm the medic. I know how to keep a heart beating when it wants to stop. He looked at Vale. Get them out. I'll meet you at the rendezvous. She wanted to argue. He saw it in her eyes. But she nodded, kissed his forehead. A gesture so tender it stole his breath, and led the children away. Alone, Darien raced through collapsing corridors, plasma fires licking at his heels. He reached the nexus, a spherical chamber at the palace's heart, where reality itself seemed to warp. Valrus was there, waiting. You think sacrifice makes you noble? The Chancellor sneered. You're just a stray dog who stumbled into a lion's den. Maybe, Darien said, raising his rifle. But dogs protect their pack. He fired not at Valrus but at the control console. Sparks flew. Alarms wailed. The overload sequence stuttered. Valrus lunged with a monomolecular blade. They fought amid the trembling architecture of the dying palace. Human grit against aristocratic fury. Darien was slower, weaker, but he knew pain. He used it. He let Valrus strike his already injured shoulder, then drove his knee into the Chancellor's gut and slammed his head into a conduit. As Valrus crumpled, Darien completed the override. The detonation diverted. The quantum drive imploded harmlessly into subspace. The palace groaned but held. Exhausted, bleeding, Darien dragged Valrus to the escape shaft. He wasn't a killer. Let the Dominion judge him. Outside, aboard Vale's frigate, the children rushed to him as he emerged. Mavrin wrapped his arms around Darien's neck. Zanara pressed a medkit into his hands, and Kirill simply said, You came back. Vale watched him, eyes glistening. You saved us all. Back on the rebuilt palace asteroid, now guarded by loyalist fleets and scrubbed clean of Concord influence. Life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. Lyra recovered fully, though she wept for weeks over what she'd nearly done. Valrus faced a tribunal of ancient AIs and was sentenced to neural exile. His mind uploaded into a silent, empty simulation for eternity. Darien, however, refused the title of heir consort. I don't want a throne, he told Lyra one evening in the restored Whispering Garden. I just want to keep my family safe. Lyra smiled, the warmth back in her eyes. Then perhaps the throne can come to you. In a surprise decree, she named Vale as her successor, and Darien not as consort, but as royal guardian, a newly revived position with authority over planetary defense, youth education, and emergency response. A role that let him protect without ruling. The children thrived. Zanara entered the elite Skyward Cadets. Kirill began designing a new class of ecoships powered by geothermal resonance. Mavrin, now fluent in 5 languages, started a sanctuary for rescued cosmic creatures. Including a rehabilitated Concord war drone he renamed Sir Squeaks 2.0. And Darien and Vale? They walked the gardens at night, hands entwined, speaking of snow and stars and the quiet joy of ordinary mornings. But in the far reaches of the galaxy, whispers stirred again. A signal, encrypted, ancient, pulsed from the ruins of a dead world. It bore no name, no flag, only coordinates, and a single phrase in old Solvan script. The first seed wakes. Darien felt it in his bones. The storm wasn't over. It was only beginning to grow roots. The signal from the dead world pulsed like a heartbeat in the void. Steady, insistent, unreadable by most. But Kirill, now deep in his studies at the Royal Archives, recognized the encryption. It matched fragments from the earliest Solvan creation myths. The tale of the first seed, a living archive of the species' genetic and cultural memory, hidden away during the Age of Shattering when war threatened to erase their very identity. Legend said it could restore lost lineages, heal fractured minds, even awaken dormant abilities in royal blood. But it was also said to be a weapon. If misused, it could overwrite will rewrite history, remake the Dominion in a single voice. Valrus had sought it. The Concord had died for it. And now someone or something had awakened it. Darien, Vale, and the children were summoned to the Empress's private chamber, where a holographic star map shimmered above the floor, its center glowing with the signal's origin. Siren 9, a frozen planetoid long believed barren, orbiting a dead pulsar. "They're testing us," Lyra said, her voice quiet but fierce. "Not with armies this time, with truth." "It might be a trap," Vale warned. "Or a gift," Zanara countered, eyes alight with the fire of legacy. Darien looked at them. His family, bound not by blood alone, but by choice, by snow, by shared silence and laughter in the dark. He knew what had to be done. "Then we go. All of us." This time they traveled not as fugitives or soldiers, but as pilgrims. The journey to Siren 9 was long, through dead systems where stars had burned out and time itself seemed to sleep. The frigate, now christened Varithus Dawn, carried no weapons, only scanners, archives, and an old thermal blanket Darien insisted on bringing, just in case. They landed on a world of black ice and silent wind. No structures, no ruins, just a vast, smooth plain beneath twin moons. In the center stood a single obsidian monolith, humming softly. As they approached, the ground parted. A stairway of living crystal descended into the earth. Inside, the air shimmered with memory. Walls pulsed with light, showing images. Solvan children learning to weave starlight, warriors laying down arms after centuries of war, healers singing wounds closed with harmonic resonance. At the chamber's heart floated the first seed, a sphere of swirling amethyst and silver, no larger than Mavrin's head, radiating warmth. The moment Darien stepped forward, it reacted. Tendrils of light reached out, not just to the royal children, but to him. It recognized his role, his sacrifice, his love. A voice, not spoken, but felt, echoed in their minds. "You have preserved what others would have discarded. You are worthy." The seed did not demand obedience. It offered harmony. One by one, they touched it. Zanara saw visions of herself leading not with a blade, but with wisdom. Kirill glimpsed a future where Dominion technology healed planets, not conquered them. Mavrin laughed as images of cosmic creatures danced around him, friends yet unborn. Vale felt the weight of rulership ease, replaced by a quiet certainty that leadership could be kind. And Darien? He saw Varithus not as a place of exile but as a sanctuary, a school, a home where humans and Solvan could learn from one another, where his numb hand could teach children to carve ice sculptures, and his stories could be part of a new shared history. The seed integrated, not by changing them but by reminding them of who they already were. When they emerged from the chamber, the monolith sealed behind them. The signal ceased. The first seed had returned to dormancy, but its gift remained. Back on the celestial court, Lyra abdicated. Not in shame, but in grace. "The old ways served us when we were broken," she declared before the assembled nobles, ambassadors, and citizens of 1,000 worlds. "But the new age needs new hands. Hands that have known cold and chosen to build fires." Vale was crowned Empress, not by blood alone, but by the acclaim of a people who had watched her stand beside a human, raise her siblings with laughter, and defend her home without hatred. Darien, now officially named Guardian of the New Concord, a title created just for him, oversaw the founding of the Varithus Institute, a joint academy on the snowy planet where human resilience and Solvan wisdom would be taught side by side. Scholars, artists, medics, and engineers from across the galaxy came to learn. Children played in the snow, purple and pink and blue and brown, building forts and telling stories that blended Earth myths with Solvon star songs. Years passed. Zanara became the youngest admiral in Dominion history, commanding a fleet dedicated to peacekeeping. Kirill's geothermal ships now powered entire colonies without harming ecosystems. Mavrin, ever the bridge builder, founded the interspecies sanctuary, rescuing and rehabilitating creatures lost to war or neglect. Sir Squeaks 2.0 served as its ceremonial chancellor. And Darien and Vale? They married, not in the Grand Hall, but on the slopes of the glacial spine, beneath the violet auroras that had witnessed their beginning. The children stood with them. Lyra, now retired to a quiet villa overlooking the Whispering Gardens, officiated with tears in her eyes. Their home was simple. A new habitat pod, larger this time, with wide windows and a hearth that glowed with real flame. On winter nights, they'd gather, Darien with his stew, Vale with her star charts, the children arguing over who got the last snow-hare dumpling. Sometimes, Darien would step outside, look up at the endless stars and smile. The universe was still vast, still mysterious. Threats would always rise. But he had learned something the old soldier in him had forgotten. Peace wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the presence of love, built daily, brick by brick, meal by meal, laugh by laugh. And on Varethus, where snow never ceased and the auroras never dimmed, that peace had taken root. One evening, as Mavrin curled against his side, half asleep, he whispered, "Are we safe now, Darien?" Darien kissed the top of his head. "Safer than we've ever been, little spark." And in the quiet that followed, with Vale's hand in his and the fire crackling low, he knew this was the ending worth fighting for. Not a finale, but a beginning. A life fully lived. A family finally whole. And that was more than enough.